let me just show you some things. This is a sermon from the Reverend Samuel Cooper. He was a famous evangelist from the First Great Awakening. Well, there was a young boy that used to follow the Reverend Samuel Cooper around, and he loved the Reverend Samuel Cooper, and that young boy was John Quincy Adams. John Quincy Adams went on to become the 6th President of the United States. Well, this is the book that John Quincy Adams wrote, and he wrote actually to his 10-year-old son to show his son how to study the Bible and get the most out of the Bible. As president, people realized what he'd done and said, hey, can we reprint that? We want our sons, we want our kids to know what you think they need to know to get the most out of the Bible. Well, this is the president who loved the Bible, wanted people to know about the Bible. Another pastor who had a huge influence in the First Great Awakening was the Reverend George Whitfield. These actually are a couple of his original sermons from the First Great Awakening, which is really cool. There was a man whose life was shaped by the Reverend George Whitfield. Actually, this man signed the peace treaty that ended the revolution. It was Elias Boudinot. Well, Elias Boudinot, after the revolution, helped form the very first Bible society in America called the American Bible Society. That society still exists today. They print over 250 million Bibles a year to give to people that don't have Bibles. Well, this is one of the very first Bibles printed under Elias Boudinot from the American Bible Society, this president of Congress whose life was shaped after he had been baptized by the Reverend George Whitfield. Well, this was a great awakening preacher whose practical influence really changed and shaped the life of someone that made a major impact in America. The Reverend Gilbert Tennent. He was someone who actually pastored church in Philadelphia at the time. Well, there was a young boy who grew up to become a founding father, but as a young boy actually studied under the Reverend Gilbert Tennent, and that was Dr. Benjamin Rush, signer of the Declaration, helped ratify the Constitution, but he was also known as the father of public schools under the Constitution. And this is actually a book full of his essays that he wrote, and actually some of the essays he wrote was for education in America, so we would know the way school ought to function and operate now that we'd become a nation. See, the First Great Awakening wasn't just about spiritual impact, it was very practical, very real and relevant. Well, one of the most famous orators, in fact known as the best pulpit speaker in the entire First Great Awakening, really in all of America, was the Reverend Samuel Davies. This is actually a sermon from the Reverend Samuel Davies, and really cool what the Reverend Samuel Davies did. He actually was talking about George Washington and how George Washington was a hero in the faith of George Washington. Because he was such a great orator, there was a young boy that traveled and wanted to learn from the Reverend Samuel Davies. Think of the guy that gave this famous speech about give me liberty or give me death. It was Patrick Henry. Patrick Henry grew up under the Reverend Samuel Davies. We actually have a document signed by Governor Patrick Henry. Well, Patrick Henry, very well known for his speech, his stance on freedom and liberty. Well, he had learned this from a pastor from the First Great Awakening, and most people today don't see the connection that spiritual emphasis that revivals have in very practical application. But the First Great Awakening helped shape education in America, helped shape business and medicine and law and government and politics. We understood that the spiritual has a very real and practical connection, and that's something that we ought to understand and once again apply our faith to today so that our faith can be relevant and make a difference in the world around us.